They can't scam you if they can't find you. This video sponsor Incogni can help protect you from identity thefts, hacks, or worse. Get a 60% discount on an annual subscription when you use offer code SKILLUP at incogni.com/skillup. More details after the video. Gamers, all right, let's do the Destiny chat. By the way, I know a lot of you don't care about this stuff, so I've timestamped it. Feel free to skip all of this because this is going to take a little while. We discussed the situation very briefly last week, but for those of you who might have missed it, last week Bungie announced that active development of Destiny 2 would cease in June, with one final game update rolling out that would look to put a bow on a game that certainly had its ups and downs since its launch back in 2017. Here's how Bungie worded the news, quote, "For almost 12 years, we've had the joy and honor to explore the Destiny universe with you all. Through the ups and downs, surprises, and triumphs, building Destiny alongside our players has been a monumental privilege. While our love for Destiny 2 has not changed, it has become clear that after the final shape, we have reached a time for our shared worlds and Destiny to live beyond Destiny 2. As our focus turns towards a new beginning for Bungie, we will begin work incubating our next games. To that end, on June 9, 2026, we will release the final live service content update for Destiny 2 to begin that new journey as a studio," end quote. That line about Destiny living beyond Destiny 2 was, I think, a little too clever by half. A reasonable reading of that might lead you to the conclusion that Bungie was actively working on a new Destiny game, so that the Destiny franchise could indeed live beyond Destiny 2. I very much had my doubts that a new Destiny game was in the works when I read that line, and my suspicions were soon confirmed by Jason Schreier of Bloomberg, who reported that Destiny 3 was not in active development. There are Destiny-related pitches bouncing around Bungie right now, but none of them have been greenlit. And since you don't need to carry a high headcount when you're in the pitching phase, Schreier also said that Sony is planning to effect sweeping layoffs at Bungie once this June update is rolled out. Schreier reports that the resources that remain will be shifted over to Marathon. Subsequent reporting from Paul Tassi revealed something a little shocking. Almost no one at Bungie knew this announcement was coming before it arrived, and the reason they didn't know was because they were hard at work on the next major expansion. Apparently, Bungie's leadership knew about the ceasing of active development a while ago, but kept the staff working on content that they knew would never be released. Absolutely insane. And that really is all we know or that's been reported to this point. We know that Destiny 2 will no longer be a live service. We know that Bungie are not actively developing any Destiny projects right now. Reporting suggests that layoffs will happen soon. We know that what's left of Bungie will be working on Marathon, as well as those incubation projects mentioned in the announcement post. If you're not close to Bungie, you might be wondering, how did this happen? How do you go from running one of the most successful live service games at an acquisition price tag of $3.6 billion to a massive write-down of that valuation and the same live service dying in just over 3 and a bit years? Well, the honest truth is that we don't really know the exact answer to that question, but the safest, most evidence-based assumption is that Bungie's leadership absolutely fucked both the studio and their golden goose, Destiny 2. Part of this mismanagement is about the sins of the past and the erosion of goodwill that came to define the way that Bungie was spoken about online. I know this firsthand because I covered Destiny in my own way, with reviews of major expansions and DLC drops, as well as regular coverage on my news show. Whenever I spoke about Destiny, a huge portion of my audience, their eyes would either glaze over with disinterest or narrow with fury. In the minds of many, Bungie had disappointed them so many times that they just lost all interest in Destiny, or they harbored a deep grievance owing to how ripped off they felt. Content vaulting will certainly be remembered as Bungie's cardinal sin, taking away content that people had paid for with only the flimsiest of excuses. It was deeply anti-consumer without any upside for us. It's not like Destiny was suddenly overflowing with new content to replace the old. It just felt like a shitty business practice that soured so many people on Bungie and also made Destiny smaller and less interesting and worse. Most importantly though, this deleting of old content completely ruined the new player onboarding experience. There was simply no way for a new player to enter the Destiny universe and not feel like they were starting on episode 10 of a 12 episode series. Tokenistic efforts towards improving the onboarding experience did not move the needle. Destiny 2 immediately became a game intended only for those already playing it. Everybody else, bad luck. With the off-ramp closed, Bungie became focused on maximizing the value extracted from those players who did remain. Yes, the Eververse sucked, and the idea of charging for transmog in a premium game remains an absolute low point for this industry, but overall, Destiny's monetization wasn't that bad, or at the very least, it could have been a hell of a lot worse. The issue was Bungie's FOMO-driven design philosophy, with content actively being cycled out of the game regularly, and with seasonal events and weapon drops only available in limited windows. Playing Destiny felt like all the work of a 9-to-5 job crossed with all the deadlines of a school assignment. We couldn't just play at our own pace because it felt like Bungie was ever at our backs, cracking the whip. That pace exhausted players while also serving as another barrier to entry for anyone thinking about stepping into Destiny. Then of course, there's the more content-based criticisms of the game. PvP died years ago, with Bungie shifting their PvP hopes and resources to Marathon instead. Certain expansions or seasonal content drops didn't meet player expectations. Technical and design debt began to pile up without ever being cleared. The list goes on and on. Even before the finality of the final shape, many people had already made peace with the idea that there was no way that Destiny would be a game they'd want to play, either because they'd felt like there was no on-ramp for them, or because they weren't interested in the FOMO, or because they were pissed off at Bungie for all the bullshit they've pulled over the years, or because the game wasn't really evolving in any meaningful ways. The net effect was that by the time the final shape rolled around, all that was left was the true believers, and unless you gave those people a really good excuse to keep sticking around after the witness bit the dust, those people were probably going to call time. The final shape was a pivotal moment for Bungie because they needed to both conclude a 10-year saga and set up the next. And unfortunately, the final shape was just a little too final. It was as good a farewell as we could have hoped for, but it was only that, and it provided absolutely no vision for the future of Destiny. You might say, well, how could it have? And the answer to that is just, it had to. There was no alternative, because a failure to make a promise for the future is the death of any live service. Bungie's leadership had a responsibility to both land the plane and build some runway in preparation for the next takeoff, but they didn't do that. And I'm sorry, but a fucking Star Wars crossover is literally the worst possible thing I could imagine for the future of Destiny, and I like Star Wars. In absence of Bungie making that promise, our attention turned to Sony, the company that paid $3.6 billion to acquire the studio and its flagship IP. What message did they send to us during this pivotal moment? Well, they laid off a significant portion of the Destiny team, hundreds of staff gone. The message couldn't have been clearer. Destiny may have a future, but it will be smaller and darker than what had come before it. It was already clear at that time that Sony's attention had turned to Marathon as their hopes for the future of Bungie, and it's here we have to start talking about Marathon. Now, right off the jump, I want to make one thing abundantly clear. I want Marathon to be successful. I never clicked with it personally, but I would love for that game to be a big success, both for Bungie, but more importantly, for the people who do enjoy it, because those people really love it. I am not a Marathon hater. I'm just not a Marathon enjoyer, and I am not alone. When I first played Marathon back at Bungie HQ, I said, it's missing something. And when I did my Service Slam impressions, I said the same thing. Now, I will admit that I worded some of my criticism in that video poorly because I think it implied that Marathon was missing vital things that would make it function as a compelling extraction shooter, which obviously it's not. What I was trying to say, poorly obviously, is that Marathon's appeal was so narrowly focused that it felt like it was missing other things that might attract a broader audience. Particularly the Bungie audience, which for the past 10 years has been largely focused on cooperative PvE experiences. And I ask you, was I wrong about that? Right now, Marathon has a lower average player count than Destiny 2 does, a game that is literally a dead game at this point, or at least it will be on June 9th. Certain regions suffer extended queue times because Marathon's player base is so small. The core community complains about how sweaty the game can feel, especially how demanding the endgame cryolabs is designed. The onboarding experience is non-existent, and the FOMO seasonal model makes it extremely difficult to pick up the game mid to late season when everybody else is leveled and decked out. So Bungie have essentially made a game that holds little appeal to their core audience, and they repeated the same mistakes that ruined Destiny. No onboarding, aggressive FOMO. And all of this would have been fine if Bungie's leadership had right-sized this project. There is no problem with Bungie making a hardcore, sweaty extraction shooter appealing to a new audience. In fact, I think that's great. Love it. But when a game that ships with 6 runners and 4 maps costs an estimated $250 million to develop, then something has gone seriously wrong at that studio. Every single Destiny expansion ever released has had more content than that, and we got those almost every single year. How on earth did Bungie's leadership bungle the management of this thing so badly that it became a too big to fail weight chained around the studio's neck? Well, I suspect that part of the explanation was the way that Bungie sold the game to Sony. If I was looking to maximize my sale price, I too would promise that extraction games were the next battle royale genre just waiting to explode. If I were an executive, I too would point to the success of Arc Raiders and say, see, look how big that game was. We're just like them. But Marathon and Arc Raiders are completely different video games Because Arc Raiders is also intended for PvE audience. It's literally the main thesis of my review of it. And that is the reason that that game has such broad-based appeal while Marathon does not. Anyone who can sense the contours of this genre would have looked at Marathon and thought, okay, this is niche. It shouldn't have a $250 million budget. It should have a $50 million budget. It should have a really lengthy beta phase. It should be built really slowly and organically based on player input and testing. It shouldn't have a $250 million upfront budget because a game like this only has the tiniest chance of making that money back, to say nothing of the ongoing cost of maintaining and updating this game. And that brings us to the past week, a decision point for the future of Bungie as a studio. Marathon has not worked. It is a good game that has not hit its desired player counts. And unless the game transforms significantly, it is never going to make enough money to support Bungie as a studio. At the same time, Destiny is languishing, and unless it receives a big injection of resources, it will continue to slide into obscurity. So if you're Sony, where do you put your money? Do you put it into the niche, hardcore extraction shooter with little appeal to the core Bungie audience, or do you cut your losses there and retreat to Destiny 2 with its vast brand cache and historical player base, but also its vast amounts of baggage? Well, we all know what Sony decided, but I think that even hardcore Marathon people will tell you that putting all of Bungie's eggs in the Marathon basket is a bad bet, since the game's most appealing quality, its demanding, unforgiving competitive loop, has little chance of reaching the sort of numbers that Bungie needs in order to survive, and watering down that challenge to appeal to a broader audience is only going to disappoint the few people who are enjoying what Marathon has to offer. Right now, you're seeing a lot of anger towards Marathon because Destiny fans feel like it's sunk their favorite franchise. And while that isn't true, it is true that there's only a certain number of development dollars to go around, and every dollar that goes to Marathon is a dollar that isn't going to Destiny. Earlier, we didn't know how big that pot was or how it was distributed, so it seems silly to be frustrated that Marathon exists. Now we know that the pot is divided 100% to Marathon and 0% to Destiny, and I think it becomes a lot easier to understand why Destiny fans are disappointed and frustrated. It is tempting to imagine that these big corporations are way smarter than us, holding all the data and paying big salaries to smart people who sit in rooms crunching numbers. Surely they must know things that we don't, right? I don't think I need to list for you all the ways that Sony's live service decision making has been catastrophically bad, like a cartoonish level of stupidity that has spilled so much treasure with almost nothing to show for it. Do not think for a second that these people have the slightest clue what they're doing when it comes to live service investment. And so I'll be honest, and I will say that I think Sony is making a terrible, terrible mistake by prioritizing Marathon over Destiny. Again, I want Marathon to be successful. I truly do. I harbor no ill will toward it, but in a zero-sum game, I know where I want the chips to go, both selfishly and also because I think Destiny offers a far, far better chance for Bungie to continue to exist as a studio. Marathon is meant to appeal to a select group of people, where Destiny is meant to appeal to basically everyone. And if Bungie can find a way to again get it appealing to everyone, then Bungie will endure. The immediate question then becomes, okay, smart guy, how do you bring Destiny back? When its most loyal fans abandon the game after the final shape, how do you bring them back, or God forbid, attract new players? Many Destiny fans will say something like, just make Destiny 3, but honestly, I don't think that's helpful advice. A new Destiny game will take 5 to 6 years to make. It'd cost $200 to $300 million at least, and in the intervening period, the Destiny fanbase will have dwindled further, moving on to other games. If I was a Sony executive and you came to me with a pitch for Destiny 3, I'm not sure I would say yes. But let's ask ourselves, what would we want from a Destiny 3? You want better graphics? I'll be honest, I think the game already looks pretty great, and I wouldn't care if it looked a little or a lot better. Do you want improved shooting mechanics? Well, look, I hate to break this to you, but they're already fucking perfect, and they're never gonna get any better because they just can't. Haters, come at me, I don't care. You want some new game modes, a new story arc, a better onboarding experience, a fresh start in terms of gear, some new weapons, some new weapon perks, new classes. Okay, these are all good ideas, but here's the thing about a live service. Bungie can give us all of this stuff without needing to sell us a new boxed product. They can just update the game like they have been doing for the past 12 years. And this is the crux of this entire video. Sony, you are making a big mistake by walking away from Destiny 2 because this game still has a lot of life left in it, and if you fan the flames in the right way, people are going to come back. Do you know why so many people quit Destiny after the final shape? It wasn't because Bungie concluded the saga, and it wasn't because Bungie failed to set up the next. It was because both Bungie and Sony didn't offer a declarative statement that the future of the game was bright. It was those layoffs that killed the franchise's momentum because we saw in that moment a declaration that Destiny's best days were behind it. But ever since then, and even today, we've all been waiting for Bungie and Sony to make that declaration. To step outside the office doors, AR in hand, fire a few rounds into the sky and yell, "Destiny is not going anywhere." If we got that promise, and if we could see that Sony was serious about keeping this game alive, and if the Destiny team could get the resources they needed, people would come back, they truly would. There is a reason that so many people in the Destiny community are grieving this announcement in the way that they are. Destiny is unique and special, and even though it's 12 years old, it still feels as though it had so much ahead of it. Sony, it's not too late. The people you need are still at the studio. The fans are here waiting. Don't do this. Don't put this franchise on ice. You will regret it, just like you've regretted basically every other live service decision you have made to this point. We don't need Destiny 3. There is a beautiful game here that can be built upon, there is a talented team that can do the building, and there is a passionate player base who are dying to return to this game if only you'd give them reason to. It's not too late. At least, I hope it's not. And I, for one, will be logged in on June 9th to show Sony that I'm not yet done with Destiny. If you're a Destiny fan, I'd invite you to do the same. Maybe it's a fool's hope, but it's better than no hope at all. Always remember, Guardians make their own fate. Timestamp bros, let me tell you, you guys really dodged a bullet. That was some smart clicking right there. The Destiny stuff is done. So now let's get to some other news, shall we? In the wake of Xbox, PlayStation, and Nintendo hiking up the price of their hardware amidst the global memory shortage, I regret to inform you that Valve have now followed suit. And I'm gonna be real with you, this one's a real doozy. Valve has announced a price increase for the Steam Deck OLED, with the 512GB model moving from $550 to $790, and the 1TB model jumping from $650 to a hefty $950. That is an increase of almost 50%. At the time of writing, the remaining stock of the discontinued Steam Deck LCD 256GB model is still available to purchase in Australia only at its original price of 650 Australian dollars. So yeah, get on that while you still can if you don't want to spend all that extra money. But yeah, this is honestly kind of crazy. It really stings given one of the best things about the Steam Deck was that it was quite affordable for what it was, especially when compared to its competitors. And yeah, even at this new price point, it's still the cheapest one on the market, but not nearly as much now. To be honest, I think this level of price increase really endangers this entire category, since spending that amount of money on a handheld experience is not generally something that most consumers are going to be interested in. Before this, the Steam Deck was a slam dunk recommend. Now, it's honestly going to be pretty difficult to give it a full-throated endorsement given this price and the fact that the device is already feeling a little long in the tooth. What does this mean for Valve's upcoming Steam machine? Nothing good, I fear. Turning to some rare good news now, turns out that rumored Witcher 3 expansion is real. That's right, this week CD Projekt Red confirmed that The Witcher 3 Wild Hunt will be getting a third expansion. It's called Songs of the Past, and best guess is that it's likely going to act as a bridging point to the sequel. Pretty difficult to believe, to be honest. I mean, it's been a decade since the last expansion, Blood and Wine. To get another so many years later is a real treat, and something that definitely does not happen very often in this industry. Kind of makes sense though, given CD Projekt Red don't have anything else coming in the near future, with both Cyberpunk 2 and The Witcher 4 still a while out. So this will probably act as a nice buffer for them and a way to keep fans thinking about The Witcher in the interim, because Lord knows, nobody's watching that TV show anymore. Fingers crossed we get a gameplay trailer for this one at Summer Games Fest. The other major reveal for this week was Unreal Engine 6, sorry, just a bit of Unreal Engine stutter there. I submitted a bug report and I'm sure it'll be fixed. Never. Yes, despite the fact that most studios are still struggling to get their games properly running on Unreal Engine 5, Epic Games has announced the next iteration of their engine via Rocket League for some reason. This trailer was aired during the Rocket League Championship Series in Paris, showcasing real-time footage of Rocket League in Unreal Engine 6, and yep, it sure looks like Rocket League, just with shinier cars and more detailed grass, I guess? The trailer also showed a mock user interface of Rocket League together with other Epic games such as Fortnite, hinting that the game may soon be accessible directly within a unified game launcher, if not Fortnite itself. That lines up with what CEO Tim Sweeney previously suggested back in 2024, saying that UE6 would feature Epic's own game-centric programming language, as well as, quote, rough deployment parity into Fortnite and into standalone products, and a metaverse economy, end quote. So yeah, it definitely seems like Epic is still trying to push the whole shared world and metaverse thing in their next engine. Please look forward to hearing children scream into their mics while you wait for your next Rocket League match to start. With GTA 6 slated to release later this year, Take-Two CEO Strauss Zelnick hinted to GamesIndustry.biz that the marketing plan for GTA 6 would be a little different to that of GTA 5, or a lot different. He was pretty vague about specifics, of course, saying only that there will be, quote, a very significant broad-based marketing campaign that reflects where audiences and attention is today, end quote, adding that, quote, 13 years ago, we were still buying network television. we won't be buying a lot of network television, end quote. He also says investors have questioned whether a marketing campaign is even necessary, because yeah, at this point you could just release this thing with zero fanfare and it'd still go absolutely gangbusters. But Zelnick says that, quote, the answer is, of course, we need to market it, end quote. And fair enough. I mean, they've got the money to do it, so why not? Related to this, Take-Two released their earnings forecast, and in a subsequent investor Q&A, Zelnick was asked about the viability of GTA Online following the release of GTA 6, and he reassured that it wouldn't be going anywhere anytime soon. Quote, it's difficult to know exactly how Grand Theft Auto Online will do after the release of Grand Theft Auto 6, but certainly it will stay in market, end quote. No surprises there, given how much bank they're still making off those shark cards. Another new studio has been formed by a bunch of former BioWare talent, as reported by GamesIndustry.biz. Studio Reset is a new Canadian indie studio, with one Kaylin Lavelli serving as creative director and producer, who previously was a technical designer on Dragon Age Origins and level designer on Dragon Age Origins 2 and Inquisition. The studio's design director is Chris Schonberg, also a former level designer on multiple titles such as Mass Effect 2, 3, Dragon Age Inquisition, and Anthem, and who left BioWare to serve as lead level designer on survival game Nightingale. And finally, signing on as art director is Francis Lucana, former character director of Anthem, and prior to that, a character artist on Mass Effect 1 and 2, Dragon Age Origins, and Inquisition. They say their studio will be built on a model that is, quote, smaller and more intentional, end quote, than the AAA model they experienced at BioWare, adding that, quote, we aren't trying to grow into something bigger, we're just trying to maintain our focus and build with intent, end quote. Their first game is described as a, quote, neo-noir supernatural mystery, end quote, that they say will involve puzzles and problem solving using in-game clues that could be interpreted in various ways. Sounds interesting, best of luck to them, I say. Speaking of new studios, Returnal director Harry Kruger has launched a new game studio, Cosmic Division. He left Housemarque back in 2023 after some 15 years at the studio, where he worked on titles such as Nex Machina, Resogun, Returnal of course, and also helped in the creation of their most recent title, Saros. As per their press release, the studio is set to develop a new single-player PC and console title that will, quote, deliver an unapologetically gameplay-first experience and a story with strong emotional resonance, end quote, adding that they're, quote, excited to push further into the experiences we love creating, intoxicating gameplay loops, audiovisual spectacle, and impactful stories that linger with players long after the credits have rolled, end quote. So yeah, seems their ethos is very much in line with that of Housemarque, and that's carried them very far indeed. They say an official announcement about the game they're working on will come at a later date. We'll definitely keep you posted on this one. The 2026 edition of the Esports World Cup will now be hosted in Paris, France, instead of Riyadh, Saudi Arabia, due to, quote, the current regional situation, end quote, of course referring to the ongoing unrest in the Middle East. Both the 2024 and 2025 events were held in Riyadh, but the Esports Federation had always said it wanted to take the events to new host cities, so this has essentially just brought those plans forward. The decision comes less than 2 months before the event was set to begin, so cutting it a little close for those with travel plans, but for those interested, the tournament will run for more than 6 weeks, beginning on July 6th of this year and concluding on August 23rd, and it will once again be a multi-game tournament featuring games such as Counter-Strike 2, League of Legends, Overwatch 2, Apex Legends, and Call of Duty Black Ops 7. Also later this year, the Esports Federation is planning to debut the Esports Nation Cup, an Olympic-style tournament that sees players compete across multiple games representing their countries, rather than just their esports organizations. Will there be drug testing, or will the competitors be juiced to the gills on G Fuel? Tune in to find out, I guess. A new Far Cry and Ghost Recon game are on the way, apparently. Ubisoft just announced their full-year earnings for 25-26, noting a 17% reduction in overall net bookings for the past 12 months due to a softer, newer release schedule. But the company does seem optimistic about the future, flagging that the lineup over the next 2 financial years will be, quote, significantly stronger, end quote, supported by new releases in its Assassin's Creed, Far Cry, and Ghost Recon franchises. I do wonder if we'll hear a little more about these at next week's Summer Games, but you know who we'll definitely be hearing from? Team Blue, because Sony's next State of Play is just around the corner. It'll be airing on June 2nd at 2 p.m. PT, and it'll run for 1 hour. The big headline here is Insomniac's Wolverine game, with the promise of an extended look at combat alongside other new details. Really keen to tune in for this one, since all we've seen to this point is a flashy trailer, and it's a great trailer, don't get me wrong, but yeah, definitely interested to see how the actual gameplay holds up. Knowing Insomniac though, I feel pretty confident about this one. Finally, 14 years after its development and still counting, Star Citizen has just crossed over $1 billion in lifetime funding, according to stats on the game's website. Apparently this happened during an in-game convention thing called DefenseCon, where players got to try all of the new ships for free, no doubt spurring sales. In fact, according to the tracker, over $9.6 million was raised in one day alone, likely due to the fact that 5 new ships were available. One of them being the Anvil Odin capital ship, which costs, and I hope you're sitting down for this, an eye-watering $5,000. And get this, in order to buy one, you first had to apply to become a member of the Odin Founders Club, which required writing an actual essay to explain why you deserve this ship. It is a 750-meter long ship meant for a crew of up to 65 players, or at least that's the concept, since it's not even an actual ship you can fly right now. They're still working on it, so you're basically buying an IOU from Chris Roberts written on the back of a JPEG. Not to mention, this ship was promised as a stretch goal back in 2017 for when funding hit 17 million US dollars. So yeah, that's a little while ago now. This entire situation is utterly insane to me, man. But hey, if you're a Star Citizen player, or you're just curious to know more about what's going on, you might enjoy Ed's excellent feature over on our website, thisweekinvideogames.com, where he actually interviewed the man himself, Chris Roberts, alongside a number of longtime Star Citizens players to assess the current state of the game and where it's headed. There's also a huge amount of other stuff that's gone up there recently, including my own interview with Paul Fu, the director of Assassin's Creed Black Flag Resynced, a freelance feature from award-winning journalist Fergus Halliday about the fragility of Kickstarter campaigns, commentary from our new writer Jamie Hoare about Battlefield 6, and Maddie's 20-year retrospective of a crazy game called Barnyard, dubbed GTA for 8-year-olds. Do you remember that one? You probably don't, but you know, maybe you do. Again, if you like what we do here and you want to get the news as soon as it breaks, plus go a layer deeper, then be sure to sign up either for free or as a paying supporter over at thisweekinvideogames.com. So what got announced or delayed this week? Not a lot, gang, not a lot at all, but don't worry, because soon we'll be complaining that we don't have enough time to cover all of the announcements when Summer Games Fest kicks off next week. What did get announced was pretty interesting though, so long as you're into Warhammer, which I certainly am, more so this week after the Pope just declared a holy crusade against the machines. Let's not get sidetracked though. Games Workshop had its annual Warhammer Skulls event just before last week's show, and they had several bits and pieces to share, but I'll spare you too much of the Space Marine stuff and just give you the highlights. The first, Dawn of War 4 has a release date, September 17th this year. This is the sequel to the RTS series, notably not being developed by Relic Entertainment like the last three, but instead by an outfit called King Art Games, whose most recent game was an RTS called Iron Harvest. Fingers crossed this one turns out well. Another announcement was the reveal of Warhammer 40k Chaos Gate Deathwatch, which is a sequel to Demon Hunters, basically the franchise's take on XCOM, and it's meant to be pretty good. No release date for this one just yet though. If you're not a fan of the 40k universe, then don't worry, they also announced a new game set in the Age of Sigmar universe, this time a 2D stealth action platformer put out by Dotemu. It's called Deathmaster, and in it you play a scaven assassin. Big rat time. The developer of this one is a studio called Old Skull Games, whose past titles have included a Nickelodeon tennis game and an airport simulator, so points to these guys for variety. Last announcement now, and not one from the Skull Showcase. You guys like Titanfall? Of course you do. You guys like Splitgate? Well, either way, 1047 Games, the developers of Splitgate, have put up on their storefront page a new game called Impulse, which by all accounts is meant to be essentially Titanfall multiplayer complete with wall running and mechs. Still early days though, as they don't even have a gameplay video for this one up just yet. So enjoy these 5 screenshots and look forward to the CEO showing up at Summer Games Fest, hopefully without the hat this time. So what came out last week? Well, it was a surprisingly full week, but let's start small. How about something the size of a cat? Schrodinger's Cat Burglar was one we featured on our Radar segment a couple of weeks ago, an indie game from our end of the world that mixed brain-teasing environmental puzzles a la Portal, using the simple idea of quantum mechanics, which is definitely something I know a lot about, by which I mean I played Outer Wilds, and that surely is enough education on the subject. On OpenCritic, it landed at a mighty 87, though there were only 4 reviews at the time of writing, so we instead turned to Steam, where just shy of 300 people have shared their thoughts so far, 98% of them recommending it. Here's a review from Steam user Husky Dynamics, which seems like the wrong person to be playing a game about cats, but here you go, quote, "The story page tagline of Portal with cats is pretty accurate. Although the premise is different, it uses the same parts of your brain to figure out how to move through each puzzle area with the ability to be in 2 places at once. The difficulty is balanced well too, encouraging clever thinking without being punishing or frustrating, and the sounds in the soundtrack are great on top of that. Even the faux science explanations are done well, with enough explanation to understand the game mechanics without getting lost in the complexities of actual quantum mechanics. Does it make sense if you think about it too much? Not quite, but it's enough to be believable, justify the title, and consistently follow its own rules as far as I can tell, so it works. I'd highly recommend this game if you like Portal, Stray, or puzzle games and cats in general," end quote. Moving on to something smaller than a cat now, Lego Minifigs, as we go to visit Lego Batman Legacy of the Dark Knight, which came out last week and had reviews drop a good amount of time before that. This one's still sitting at a mighty 85 on OpenCritic, and things over on Steam are overwhelmingly positive after 6,300 reviews counted. Look at GameSpot's 8 out of 10 review for this one, written by one of the parents on the team, Steve Watts, who loves a good family-friendly game, saying, quote, "For the first time in a long time, this is a return to form for the LEGO series. It's still simple, but not quite as simple. It's bursting with even more secrets, and it's another playful take on a mythology that I love. It's the most fun I've had with the LEGO games since 2005, and a template for how LEGO games can rebuild into something greater. piece by piece, end quote. On our team, Austin is still playing through this one, but only because he's been helping out with some extra editing work lately between the new show and Bond and Forza and all the rest. His review is still coming though, so please look forward to it. Moving on now, remember Bubsy? Unless you regularly watch Donkey, then you probably answered no, but that hasn't stopped Atari from trying to bring him back with Bubsy 4D, which arrived last week. These old games were pretty bad, and this new one sounds a little bit better at least. It's developed by indie dev for Braz, who did the excellent 3D platformer Demon Tides, but this one doesn't quite hit those highs by the sounds of things. Still a fair 72 on OpenCritic, very positive on Steam with over 400 reviews counted. IGN's review clearly had a soft spot for the character and landed at a 7 out of 10, saying, quote, Bubsy 4D easily stands as the best Bubsy game ever made. Of course, that is not a particularly high bar to clear for the series. Still, while it does succeed at boosting Bubsy as a lovable character in a lovable vehicle, it did leave me wanting for a more developed platformer. The skill testing movement makes for a fast and sharp platformer with a ton of energy, but it's also one that ends up feeling a bit safe in the end. Even still, it's undoubtedly a charming throwback with satisfying 3D platforming action that really nails where it counts, and I couldn't help but be pleased to see a video game mascot from a bygone era given another shot in the spotlight, end quote. Moving on now to Paralives, the life sim that landed in early access last week. Now, I didn't actually know this, but apparently this started off as a solo project. Pretty crazy for someone to tackle a genre like this on their own. There is a small team that's been subsequently built around it. This one also landed at a very positive sentiment on Steam, 88% positive, with bugs being the biggest issue pointed out by people, as you'd expect from something like this. Here's Steam user Elpec, who had some admiration to share. Quote, while the game is still very buggy, it's an absolute blast to play. The build tools feel smooth and fun to use and are incredibly versatile. Live mode already feels pretty complex, even with the limited amount of overall features, largely since the townie guest life goals and nightly stories enrich gameplay and optionally guide players into a gameplay direction. Price tag isn't something to scoff at for an indie game in early access, but I absolutely recommend the game to any life sim lovers who are okay with helping shape development and encountering the occasional bugs, end quote. Another early access title and radar pick, Enter the Chronosphere, the turn-based bullet hell roguelike. It's only just been released at the time of writing, but carries a very positive rating on Steam. Here's Steam user SOU with their take, quote, the game is truly something special. It's a bit of a weird mix of genres, but it's executed in such a good way that it just feels natural. The art is beautiful, each weapon is unique and fun, the gameplay is chaotic and intense without being overwhelming. Each run is varied and it already has tons of replayability. The game is just super fun. Can't wait to see how it evolves through early access, end quote. Another early access title now, Roamstead, which seems to have attracted quite a number of players, notably hitting a peak of over 9,000. That's a DBZ reference. Anyway, love to see it for an indie title, but with more players comes more discerning opinions, and right now it's sitting in a mostly positive bucket at 76%. One of the more measured takes comes from Steam user Killian, who gave it a thumbs up after 6 hours of play. They said, quote, it's very fun, but it's still beta-ish green. This will be a banger with more updates and content, lacks some quality of life, and overall does a poor job at explaining a few things, especially in the recipe or material requirements side. The only bad design choice, in my humble opinion, are how citizens are used to progress the game. Recommend if you give it more time to cook. And finally, it's 007 First Light Time, and damn, this one has sure made a splash. It's landed at a mighty 88 on OpenCritic, which is actually higher than I would have expected, with lots of love thrown at its big budget hybrid gameplay that draws from IO's experience on Hitman. I think Bond's biggest fanboy is probably Jordan Midler over at VGC, who gave it 5 out of 5 stars, saying, quote, 007 First Light might just be the best James Bond game ever. The way IO has translated the Bond fantasy into a 14-hour globe-trotting epic is masterful. It's a game full of spectacle, humor, action, and romance. Everything James Bond should be, end quote. On the slightly more reserved end of things comes Eurogamer, who gave it 4 out of 5 stars, saying, quote, 007 First Light is less cerebral and replayable than IO's World of Assassination trilogy, but makes up for it with excellent fistfights and oodles of charm, end quote. As for me, my review is live right now, link below the like button. But I totally agree, man. I love this thing. I thought it was fantastic. I did have some problems with it, particularly that first act, which I found quite awkward for a number of reasons. And I do think some pacing issues pop up here and there. Also, the ImSim stuff isn't exactly what I would have liked. Some of it feels a little bit goofy, a little bit stretched out. But overall, man, they carry the day. You know, the action, the fisticuffs, the shootouts, the car chases, Bond and his, cheeky smile, all of it just super work for me. Definitely recommend it. And if you want to hear more, like I said, link to my full review below the like button. All right, so what's coming out this week? Well, it's going to be very quiet over the next 7 days. The quietest the release calendar has been all year, I think. Whether that's because everyone is too busy sitting through 1,000 Summer Games Fest showcases, or everyone is just deathly afraid of another Hollow Knight Silksong situation with the release of Mina the Hollower. Speaking of which, kicking things off on Friday, May 29th, will in fact be Mina the Hollower, which has already pushed Devolver's Dark Scrolls out of the way. This is, of course, the next game from Yacht Club Games, the team that created the highly influential Shovel Knight over a decade ago now, where Shovel Knight was the team's take on bringing modern sensibilities to old-school platforming games like Castlevania and DuckTales, Mina the Hollower is this team's take on top-down retro action-adventure games like 2D Zelda. There's a big emphasis on Mina's ability to burrow underground as an exploration and traversal ability, a heavier emphasis on combat variety with weapons and some Bloodborne influences, as well as a darker and more challenging direction overall and plenty of surprises apparently. The studio has been working on this one for a very long time now. It was delayed a couple of times. It's meant to be 30 to 40 hours long, and a Bloomberg report from late last year described it as a make or break title for the studio, so fingers crossed it goes really well for them. This one is hitting all platforms. Also landing on Friday is another game focused on the challenge, 868 Back, the traditional roguelike with a hacking theme that we featured in our radar segment a couple of weeks ago. To jog your memory a little bit, this comes from developer Michael Bruff, who has basically only ever developed small-scale, hardcore roguelikes across his career, and this one marks his return after a bit of a hiatus. Turn-based and grid-based, where every move has big risks and big reward. The theme sees you hacking into mainframes and brute-forcing your way through viruses. PC only for this one. Jumping all the way over to Thursday, 4th of June now, when most of the releases are landing. The first one of these is River City Saga Journey to the West, which is being published by Arc Systems Works. Some of you out there might remember River City Ransom on the NES, which was essentially a beat-em-up RPG that was quite ambitious for its time. This franchise has seen somewhat of a revival in recent years as the genre has come back into fashion, and it's enjoyed a few themed installments, with this one being the latest. It's based on the Chinese epic of the same name, which was also the text that Black Myth Wukong was based on, along with Dragon Ball Z and other video game characters. PC, PS5, and Switch for this one. Also landing on June 4th is 7th Guest Game, which as you can imagine is a remake of an FMV horror adventure game from back in the early 90s, which was very big back in the day of early PC games. This remake mixes 3D environments and newly recorded FMV videos to do its thing. And if you've recently enjoyed first-person puzzle games like Myst and Riven remakes, you'll probably get a kick out of this one too, all platforms for this one. And finally, you know it's slow when I start bringing up soccer games. There's a new one called Goals coming out, hoping to make a grab at the EA Sports FC market. Unlike Rematch though, this is sticking to the top-down thing, but insists it's focused on, quote, pure skill, end quote. This one's being made by a new studio in Sweden that's being led by a former Counter-Strike 1.6 pro by the name of Andreas Thorstensen. So a very clear competitive focus here. This one's coming to PC, PS5, and Xbox. You know what that list of game releases was missing? Guns and demons. So put this on your radar.
The cost of my past sins. My daughter's spirit trapped within a silver locket by an evil being of the underworld.
This game is called Rose and Locket, and as you can see, it's a very bold-looking action platformer with Western vibes, where you play a gunslinger, named Rose of course, who fights through the underworld, or the Underwest in this case, to kill the 7 deadly sins in order to save the soul of her daughter. The combat revolves around movement and dodging and 360-degree shooting, as well as platforming through some pretty cool-looking scenes, some of which are composed more like graphic novel pages. This one comes from a 2-person team out of New Zealand. We've had the chance to play the demo at a few local conventions where it certainly popped off with its art direction. This one should have just come out on Steam by the time this episode goes live, and hopefully the free demo is still up at that time as well. If you do like the look of it, we've left a link to it over on our Steam creator page, which also has links to all of the other put this on your radar stuff we've recently covered. I'll leave a link to all of that below the like button. For our feel-good story for the week, it feels only right to dedicate it to the topic that occupied a disproportionate amount of this video. Destiny 2, that's right, I got one more in me. Fearing the game's untimely demise, a recent trend has emerged on Twitter with the caption, "Dad, how good were you at Destiny 2? The inference being that we're about to see some sick as hell gameplay. Instead, we get the sort of gameplay that your average Destiny player, myself included, would produce on a regular basis. Clips like this. But my personal favorite has to be this one. See, I don't even know what happened there, but god damn it if that isn't just the perfect moment. Sony, see what you were throwing away. See the player base you were leaving behind. I hope it's not too late, but you know what it's definitely not too late for? Drop in a like on this video. Anyone new to these parts, do hit that subscribe button and ding that notification bell as well. And if you really want to support what we're doing, then do head over to our website thisweekinvideogames.com to sign up either for free or as a paying supporter. The next time you'll hear from me, I'll be in LA covering the Summer Games Fest. Jeff is already half teasing Half-Life 3. What we all want to know is, what's going to be Jeff's one more thing this year? Please be fair games. That would just be so goddamn funny. Anyway, I'm out. Thanks again for watching, and a big thanks to this video's sponsor, Incogni. This video sponsor Incogni knows that removing your data from as many corners of the internet as you can is a relentless and exhausting process. Incogni is here to help though, by offering tools that combat phishing emails, scam calls, identity thefts, and makes your personal information much harder to find online. Incogni makes it super simple. You sign up, you enter your details, you grant it the required permissions, and after that, Incogni steps in and sends out hundreds of automated requests to reclaim your data. Incogni has sent out over 177 requests on my behalf, which has resulted in my personal data being removed from 171 websites. 171! I didn't even know that my data was on 171 websites in the first place. Thankfully, it no longer is, thanks to Incogni. Oh, and if I was to have submitted those requests myself, doing all the paperwork and back and forth, it would have taken me around 128 hours, making Incogni incredibly well priced given how much value it delivers. Also, since data can reappear on sites when it's already been taken down, Incogni will circle back and repeatedly remove it for you, saving you even more time and energy. If you've ever Googled yourself, oftentimes there's a lot more information online than you'd expect. A lot of the time, this comes from online agencies exploiting your data, many of which you might not have known had your data in the first place. To give you even more agency over who has your info, Incogni offers a special custom removal option where you can tell it precisely where to remove your personal data from. Some exclusions apply to this service, but it does give you another layer of protection and privacy. It's super easy, super effective, and best of all, super affordable. You can use offer code SKILLUP at incogni.com/skillup to get 60% off an annual subscription. Take your personal data back and get a 60% discount while doing it by visiting incogni.com/skillup and using offer code SKILLUP at checkout. Thanks Incogni for sponsoring the video, and thank you for watching it.